money is charges had to be laid, and so we had a kind of a catch-22. The RCMP didn't feel the need to lay the charges, so the money sat there and wasn't used for that. If we are going to put any funds together, I think it needs to be clear that it's something that we're going to define it, and it's not going to be contingent upon charges being laid and people going through the system. So that, to me, was the reason that we ended up moving it out, because we never got to that point, and we had a pool of money sitting there that couldn't be accessed until somebody got charged, but there was no point in charging anybody. So that's the piece to me that we would have to discuss. And again, as Mayor Brown had mentioned, that we have the ability to move funds to these types of things as they come up. So I would count on staff and RCMP and the community to come back and say, we've identified a need, we've identified, you know, some programs or funding vehicles to do that, and we could move it forward on that sense. So.
Yeah, so, and you know about FC, you mentioned community links and everything else, Mackenzie, but so Gord's coming up, he's got a policing presentation, so I'm sure we're going to be able to forward that question on to him and see where he sits, but again, just, you know, reiterating, I'll be there tomorrow as well, so obviously we spent some time together the other night, really appreciate not only what you're doing here, but your reign as Miss Teen Airdrie and representing our community. I speak for all of my council colleagues and all the community and really want to sincerely thank you. You represented our city in a tremendous way, always very positive, always very well spoken. So I really want to thank you on behalf of our council and community. And again, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I hope they have a pink shirt that fits me. I'm not quite sure yet, but it's going to be fun. So we'll see you tomorrow. And thanks again for coming in tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to, oh, sorry, we need to accept this for information. Who made the introductions? Deputy Mayor Bellick, please.
Thank you. And once again, I'd like to thank Mackenzie and her and Tara for all the advocacy they have done over the number of years. So I'd like to make the motion to accept the presentation for information.
Excellent. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We're moving on for introductions. Councillor Hunter, please, 6.2.
So, Mark, if Mark can come forward to introduce Inspector Sage, the RCMP, to present Council with 2016 biannual policing overview.
Your Worship and Council, sorry, Your Worship and Council members.
Do you want to get a drink of water before you get started, Mr. Locking?
Didn't start off right, did it?
You want to start again?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to welcome Detachment Inspector Gordon Sage, as well as Staff Sergeant Chad Fournier, who are here to give you a presentation on Airdrie's Municipal Detachment Strategic Policing Overview. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gordon.
Good evening, Your Worship and City Councillors. Tonight I'm presenting the Airdrie Municipal Detachment 2016 Biannual Policing Overview Report, which is what I will present 2 times per year, which will outline our present situation, and for tonight I'll be summarizing 2015. I'm glad to report that we're well positioned to move into 2016 with our present scenario. Airdrie Municipal Detachment will consist of 57 members and 15 support staff on April 1st, 2016. The 8 new positions that were approved on April 1st, 2016 are well underway of being staffed and are believed to be completed by the April 1st expected date. There's one exception to that will be probably the supervisory positions, the roadside supervisors. The reason is we are going to a promotion on some of them. That allows us to have the opportunity to select the right fit for Airdrie, for the city of Airdrie, and for a detachment. So it's well worth a slightly more detailed process to be able to pick the persons who come to Airdrie. Presently, Airdrie Detachment is supported by a number of volunteers. The citizens of patrol actively patrol the streets of Airdrie with direct communications to the police. In 2015, the citizens on patrol logged over 19,400.
There we go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
475 kilometers within the city of Airdrie, with 1,740 hours with 25 volunteers. Secondly, air detachment continues with 2 volunteers that work the front counter. In 2015, these volunteers worked 1,038 hours in the detachment. Airdrie also benefits from a very active victim services unit with 32 volunteers working in 2015, 2,971 hours and assisting 3,934 victims in the city of Airdrie. Now, some of our current initiatives that we have ongoing, I'll speak of the first one, is our Safe City Streets program. This graph shows the entire breakdown of enforcement for 2015 and previous years. The program started in 2010, and it breaks down where these offenses, what violations took place in the city of Airdrie. One thing to note, in 2015, we wrote 6,453 violations. This almost tripled the 2014 numbers the year previous. In 2015, this program produced what the previous 5 years did in total. The following graph shows that the violations that were written in the city of Airdrie over the years, starting in 2010 all the way up to 2015, and this represents that the mass amount that were written in 2015 compared to previous years. So it continues to be a very critical piece to our detachment. The following graph represents the ticket revenue compared to the program. So as you're probably aware, we bring members in on overtime to focus on troubled areas in the city of Airdrie. So it's focused on those troubled areas that school zones and areas that cause concern in the city. In 2015, $1.12 million worth of tickets were issued in the city of Airdrie, and at a cost of $250,000 in salaries. So the ratio between the tickets of the members' salaries and tickets is about a 4.4 ratio between the salaries and the revenue generated. Now, you have to be aware that the province does take a percentage of these tickets. So if you look at approximately what the province would take, it would leave approximately $750,000 to $800,000 directly to the city of Airdrie. So that still remains at about a 1-to-3 ratio of what the city will get in return. Now, there's other benefits other than just the enforcement of the traffic with this program as well. One of the big benefits that we do push, and we do believe that it does have an effect with more police cars on the road, more lights activating stops. There's a deterrent for other criminality in the city of Airdrie. So we do know a lot of our property crime is committed by people from outside of Airdrie, from residents of Calgary, and we do hear that it does have an effect when people do come to Airdrie when they see the flashing lights. So it does have a huge deterrent for other criminality in the city of Airdrie. The following graph shows the trends and emerging issues within the city of Airdrie. So the following graph shows the call intake of the city of Airdrie from comparing 2014 and 2015. Yes, there's an increase every month, but I'm not concerned about that increase. We have clearly seen that Airdrie is a textbook case for population. Our crime is related to population increase, and these numbers are certainly within that expected increase of population growth. This is why we focused on a 3-year policing plan to be able to cover off these areas. But the crime is consistent from month to month, as you can see. There's in the summer months it does increase, but it's similar from year to year, so it is quite predictable. The following graph shows the amount of calls for service in the city of Airdrie. In 2015, we received 14,000 calls of service in the city of Airdrie. In 2016 already, in the month of January, we're up 106 calls from last year. So it certainly is consistent with that population growth, which doesn't cause alarm to me. When you look at all the different crime groups, and as the chart on the bottom shows, this graph demonstrates the three main categories of crime groups in the city of Airdrie. So we have total persons crime, total property crime, and other criminal code. So the persons crime are, of course, the crimes against people. From the previous year, we were up 31 calls in the persons crime category, which is also consistent with the population growth. What area we've been hit with in 2015 was a property crime, which was up 871 calls, which is probably the area which I'll get into next, which shows where those increases were and what types of crime. But that's the area that I find that we've had increases from 2015 from previous years. This here is another graph that demonstrates those same categories on a bar chart from 2011 and 2015. The middle chart, or the orange color, is property crime, and persons crime is the blue on the left. So you can see the persons crime is somewhat similar. There's a slight increase. Property crime is what Airdrie has increased with in 2015. Some of the categories of that property crime, what is it? This is what I refer to as a property crime, and I'll get into the areas of Airdrie where we're finding this has occurred. So the graph here shows 2011 to 2015 in different categories. So theft over 5,000, theft under 5,000, and mischief. These are some of those areas that have increased. Mischief, break-and-enters, and theft from motor vehicles. 2015, this was our biggest activity. I'll get into domestic violence as well at the end of the presentation, but this on the property crime, these are the increases.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Inspector Sage, if I could, Your Worship.
Yes, go ahead.
Could you, what's an example of mischief? What would be a mischief call? We all know what break-in or theft from a motor vehicle, but what would constitute mischief?
Mischief would be damage to property, so somebody breaking a fence, graffiti, doing damage to someone else's property. So a lot of it would be those types of offenses.
Would that fall into like noise offenses, so on and so forth? Noisy parties going on?
Noisy parties would fall into to the bylaws section, which I'll show you. Our bylaws actually have decreased in this year, but it's more or less when you take away the enjoyment of someone's property is the definition of mischief. So if you destroy something or mark it up or not allow them to enjoy their property is a mischief offense.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, Your Worship.
Councillor Coulson.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out or ask, is this when we're talking, when we see the number of B&Es and theft of motor vehicles, sometimes that can be the same call, correct? Or is that a different chart that we've seen before? Like, we've talked about the criminal case files and how one call can lead to a charge of mischief, a break-and-enter, theft of a motor vehicle. Is that this, or is that a different chart that we're getting to?
No, this will be per event. So if you, yes, a break-and-enter could be similar to damage to property, but it would be captured as the most serious event.
Okay, so it's not like we're seeing one call with 5 cases that are sort of rising these numbers.
Yeah, this graph would show those actual incidents that have occurred. So someone may have committed 3 or 4 incidents to 3 or 4 properties. That would be captured 3 times, not one incident. So if someone goes down the street and breaks into one house, a second house, and a third house, that's actually 3. That would capture 3 events, not 1.
Right. So we don't know. I guess it's kind of hard for us to capture how many houses are hit with that one individual that you catch, or.
Yeah, that's what I don't. Right. I'm not breaking down here.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, please continue, Gordon.
Okay, next we have drug trafficking is, up in 2015. Now the next two charts is what has actually gone down in 2015. As the municipal bylaws with us, with the RCMP, have gone down in 2015, and false alarms have also gone down in 2015. We do charge people for false alarms, and we do believe that certainly have an impact, a benefit impact for the calls for service. Municipal bylaws, that is, to answer your question, the noisy party would be reflected in that municipal bylaws chart. Now the following maps, I'm going to show 2 maps per crime type. Now the first map you're going to see, as you see now, are actual dots. And what that is actually locations. On the very top of the graph, you'll show this graph represents theft of motor vehicle files. So this graph represents every theft of motor vehicle file within the city of Airdrie in 2015. So it shows that and the next chart I show you is going to summarize those subdivisions in a color coding system. So I'll go through this with a number of different crime types just to give you a perspective of where the crime is happening within the city of Airdrie. So this here is theft of motor vehicle files in 2015, where this chart breaks it down into a color coding system. So the red area is the highest area, which East Lake Industrial, and the downtown area is the highest area for theft of motor vehicle files in 2015. The next color is the orange color, which is the next highest, and then yellow, green, and white, which is the lowest. So you'll find, as I present here, downtown certainly is always have a higher number. I do believe that's because of the higher density housing in those areas, which automatically increases it. When it comes to theft of motor vehicle files in the red zone and in East Lake Industrial, I do believe a lot of that is because of the Adisa auction in that area, and then also industrial areas where there's not as much visible presence of people, so it makes it more attractive for people. The next area goes into Kings Height and the Thornburn area, and what I find interesting with this graph is it appears to be a more east-west connection, where the east side of the QE2 is more vulnerable than the west side. It's something we're going to continue to monitor as we go through, but that's to do with theft of motor vehicle files, 2015. The next file is mischief files in 2015, which represents, once again, the actual locations of where the damage to property, vandalism type files occurred. Followed up, once again, by the color coding system, with downtown being the highest, the red area, the orange, the next highest, as we go down from there. The next graph shows the theft from motor vehicles. This is one area that plagued us in the summer of 2015 with many vehicle theft from motor vehicles. We in fact did some proactive areas where we went door to door to residents with our citizens on patrol and actually located vehicles and actually physically locked them and left a note that you should lock your area. And I'll show you in the next chart the areas we did that in, just to show you. But this was a big activity in 2015. This chart, once again, represents the color coding system of that theft of motor vehicles. So a lot of our areas was the downtown area, Kings Height, and the Luckstone area. Now, as I said, when we did the door-to-door campaign to actually check in vehicles, we did that in the Prairie Springs and the Windsong area. So the southwest area is where that took place in. And on this graph, it shows an orange color. We didn't have this data when we did that. Obviously, next year as we go through, if we look at that program again, we can use these graphs to target these higher areas that are marked in red. The following is the break and enter in 2016 of all the locations of the break and enters, followed by the color coding system for that same crime type. downtown and East Lake Industrial were the busier areas. The break and enters in the industrial area is once again consistent with the lack of people in those areas in the evening hours.
Excuse me, Inspector Sage, I'm sorry, Your Worship. Is there a breakdown between residential and commercial break and enter?
Good question. I don't believe there is. I believe I can check on that, but I believe it captures all as one.
That's all as one. I was just curious. Obviously, in East Lake Industrial, that's more commercial industrial break and enter. I'm just curious, in some of the neighborhoods, are they stores, are they local businesses that are being broken into, or are they, you know, what the breakdown is between residents and commercial?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the East Lake side is all pretty much all commercial, yeah, I don't have that breakdown between those specific areas.
Sir, so we're almost finished the presentation, correct, Gord? Because there's a number of lights were coming on here. So we're going to finish the presentation. Hold your questions till the end of Gord's session here, and I'll get to you right away. Thank you.
And finally, the last graph is domestic violence area. Once again, domestic violence is spread throughout the city I find with no rhyme or reason, and I'll get into the domestic violence next. So what I find these graphs are now a benefit for us is now we're able to look at these maps and respond our patrol activities to them. So this is something we will generate consistently and share with our membership so we can, when members on patrol, and we can focus on these specific areas. Domestic violence, as I've reported before, 2015 was a high number for domestic violence in the city of Airdrie. In 2015, we finished up with 799 domestics in the city of Airdrie that were confirmed. In total, 974 were reported, and this is what the graph on the bottom really shows the breakdown, but I will summarize it for you. 974 were actually reported, and out of those numbers, 799 were confirmed to actually have met the definition of a domestic by the province of Alberta. Roughly that was about 2.6 domestics per day that our members would attend to if you base it on 365 days a year. Of those, there were 129 charges laid of the 799 where charges were actually laid in court. Now, Airdrie Detachment, we are well positioned to deal with domestic violence. We do have 3 full-time positions. With our new supervisor positions coming online, roadside supervisors, traditionally our domestic violence have been more as a review capacity to look for those high-risk files and make sure we give it the attention they need. With our roadside supervisors coming online, we're going to have a much better ability for our frontline supervisors to provide that, where our domestic violence people are going to start moving into more of a proactive role where they're able to follow up. You know, once someone is charged and there's conditions in court where they might be forced to stay away, we're going to be doing follow-up to those residents to make sure they're in fact following the conditions. So we're going to move in 2016 into a much more proactive and I think a much more beneficial role with our frontline supervision covering off the role that domestic violence traditionally did. We also have a very active victim services unit, which is a benefit to us, and the victims of domestic violence certainly provide top-notch service from volunteers within our detachment. One interesting statistic that's not on here, I'm watching domestic violence very closely. In the month of January, it in fact has dropped quite drastically. In 2015, in the month of January, we had 90 domestics in that month. This month we had 49. So I'm encouraged that that number has gone down significantly, just in the month of January, mind you, but it's something we are watching very closely, and at first blush it has gone down. I'm hoping this number was a peak. Finally, as we move into 2016, the photographs below here are some of the proactive programs we've been doing. The first 2 were the Toonie Night and the Genesis Place, where we where 5 members volunteered to play basketball with the kids. It was a great turnout at Genesis Place. We had our recruiting people set up in the lobby to hopefully attract the type of career for residents of Airdrie. And it's something that we're going to continue doing proactively to try and connect with the kids. The picture on the right is a picture during the Festival of Lights where our members were out with the community. Our Safe City Nights program will continue in 2016. It has a role where we enforce a lot of the bylaws. Half of that, their time, members that come in to work those nights, half of them are proactive in doing the active parks, walking the parks, and the other half is more of an enforcement role. So that will continue, and we hope to have more proactive examples like this into 2016. And I open myself to any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, Councillor Coulson had her light on first, and follow up with Councillor Hunter, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking at those downtown numbers, and it almost looks as if you're downtown, you're getting hit awfully hard because everything is worse downtown. So going back on Councillor Chapman's comment about how do we know if it's residential or business, I guess it would say to me that it's got to be business, or we'd be hearing from downtown residents that we have a big problem if they're in the red zone with everything.
Yes, and this chart has just been created this year for the first time. It's a program that we're able to tie into to obtain this data. Previously, we never had this type of data where you can actually map it. So it's something we're really going to work on and look at for future years. And yes, that downtown is consistently red in all those areas. So we're certainly going to, as we move forward, look at why that is and maybe look at that breakdown between
Right.
those two areas. But it is certainly,
Because we're not seeing that in Sierra Springs or in any of our bigger commercial nodes, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't hear a lot from downtown residents that they feel that crime is escalated as much as it looks like on our charts. And then my next question is just out of curiosity, when we go back and we look at the EPOs, the emergency protective orders, requested, issued, and denied. So requested 2, issued 9, and denied 1. So do you automatically issue an EPO without them having to request one?
yeah, that's a process that goes through the court system. So it's a request through the court system to identify these. So we have to present the case to now those numbers, let me just look at them, if that was just the month of January.
I guess I'm just wondering who requests them. It's more just curiosity because we have 2 requested, 9 issued, and 1 denied. So does an EPO, is it automatically issued if the case is severe?
Our members, they work directly with victim services and the victim themselves and provide the victim that information. And we can make the application with them, or we can have, or if they choose to, they can go down to the court office if they feel comfortable and make that application themselves. So we're not the ones that are denying it, it's the courts. So.
Okay, so they're requesting it with you, with your help, those individuals, but then they can go to the courts separately, so you wouldn't have that requested info.
Yeah, those would be the requests that come through us or with
Okay.
us.
But they don't have to request it through the RCMP.
Correct.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunter.
Through the chair, do they still break down? So when you lay charges, would it be shop breaking or house breaking, or is it just break and enter? Because it used to be captured that you could tell just by the charge.
Yeah, the break and enter, that's the charge for breaking into a house or a business.
So they don't define it. They used to define it, house breaking and shop breaking were 2 separate entities, and years ago it used to be quite more serious to be caught breaking into a home because understanding that it was more than likely occupied, whereas shop breaking typically at night, there's nobody around. So they don't break it down by shop or home?
No, the break and enter, that applies to both, but I think when it comes time to, for the judge to sentence, to handle their
Right.
sentencing, then they take those factors into account.
Ah, okay, thank you.
But through the chair, the break and enter, that would capture both the residential and the commercial
Right.
in these numbers. It doesn't separate the two.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, just a couple of comments and a couple of questions. The one comment is, I'd like to thank you guys for saving me 2% on my taxes with that $800 of revenue from the Enhanced Traffic Safety Program. I think people have to realize that that money comes right to the city's bottom line, and that does affect our tax base. So, that's something important to know. If they're generating $800,000, that's just about 2% tax increase. Saving us 2% tax increase. I have a question about the bylaw calls that have gone down. Is it that the bylaw calls have gone down, or the bylaw calls that the RCMP are responding to?
This would just be the RCMP side that we're responding to.
That you
Now,
respond, okay.
I have asked, I asked our bylaw people as well if theirs have gone down, and they've found the same thing.
So the overall in the city bylaw calls, basically noisy parties, stuff has gone down. Fantastic.
But these are totally independent of municipal enforcement. This
Exactly,
is just
yeah.
the RCMP attending.
The ones that the RCMP are responding to. The other question I had, with the domestic violence, the 799 actual calls, I would assume some of those are going to the same household. Would they be? Would they be separate? Is it individual, I don't know how you'd call it, couples or whatever? Or would that be per response?
That would be per response, so there is a possibility that if they were fighting 1 week and the week after, that captures two.
So it could capture more houses than that. And no, that was all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Haig?
Thank you, Your Worship. So in looking at this is pretty much raw data, right?
Yes.
There's not really any further analysis. This is just a report of the number of calls. So I think you don't have to be a statistician really to figure out that if it's denser downtown, there's going to be more calls. There's more people probably reporting it, correct?
And that's why I'm speculating. Like I say, that it's fairly new data we have, but I'm wondering if the higher density housing in those areas will reflect that in the downtown. But I do have to break that down and look at that. This data was obtained within the last 3 weeks, so it's a new process, and I can request to try and break that down into more, so we can go into that one area downtown and try and break that down further, based on the statistics. But it's based on when a member attends a call, we have a scoring system how we capture that data, and that's what these reports are based off of. So it's how the members see the call and reflect it in the actual scoring, and the supervisors ensuring that's in fact true. So it is a raw data for sure, and now we have to break it down further.
Right, because I think it would be speculative that, just because there is a higher density that, there's going to be more calls, right? Because, you're going to have more people, so that stands to reason. You look at Woodside, it's mostly golf course. Yep. Honestly, right, and few houses compared to what downtown is. And
and I do that. I do look at areas that are very low, mm-hmm. and Woodside is one that's very low. And I ask myself, why is that? One thing we have the ability we can do now is approach our, the people who develop subdivisions, and I'm wondering if there's design component to why some areas are hit more than others. Is there more lighting? Is there the design of a subdivision? But now that we have this data, we can start going into that and providing the data to city officials who can look at that and see if there's a design issue of why some areas are more than others. So it's encouraging that we do have this for the first time, this data. I think we can do a lot with it, and it's something we're going to be pushing, here in the future.
Well, again, and thank you for this. I would just hesitate to make, to jump to some conclusions without delving more into the actual stats. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Always great to have you, Sergeant Fournier, Inspector Sage. Just a couple of questions. I was kind of hoping for a little more detail on kind of your goals and objectives. When I first read the report, it sort of outlined what we're going to be providing the community in 2016. I got more of a data feel. obviously, with what I see. So it'd be nice to know, okay, how are we going to react to the red zone? What's the plan going forward? I mean, obviously there's some details you don't want to share with the criminal elements that may be following us on the tube right now, or I won't say that's sitting in the audience with us, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're being proactive and we're not letting everybody know all of our secrets. But it would have been nice to have some of that detail, Gord, so that we kind of, okay, where are we going to be positioned on domestic violence? Of the 799 cases, are some of them the same people, or the same couples, or the same family? Some of that data would be good to know as well. I was curious on the ticket revenue assumptions. That's based on getting the full amount back, right? Because a lot of people fight their ticket, and they negotiate a settlement with the officer, or they claim it never happened. I'm just curious, is that an estimate based on the actual full amount?
Yes, we have looked at the past years to see how much, because yes, if someone has a no insurance charge and they're picked up, they can do time in jail instead of paying the ticket. So as we looked over the years, it's about a 65 to 68% on average that comes back to municipalities. Now, it does vary based on many factors, whether fines are paid, and also if they don't pay fines this year, it might get collected 2 years later when they get finally picked up. But we're looking at about a 65 to 68% that comes back to the city, and that's based on past years. And that's why when I said the 750,000 back to the city, that is about that 65% of that 1.12 million that comes back to the city. So it does vary. I can't give you an exact number.
Yeah,
on
no,
that.
I appreciate the revenue piece, but it's about keeping the community safe and making sure we're addressing the issues of distracted driving and speeding and all of those other things. So I was amazed to see the increase in the numbers, quite frankly, in 2015. To look that over. I guess so going forward, it would be nice on your next report to give us a little bit more detail as to, what 2016 is going to look like for the detachment. That's what I'd like to see. I'm not sure about my colleagues. If maybe police committee, they've shared more details on kind of the proactive approach, some of the things you're going to be doing, but certainly the domestic violence is a real big concern for all of us. The other thing I just want to reflect a little bit on is, how would you know that the economy is related to some of these offenses, so to speak, or these unsavory characters that are poaching our vehicles and creating problems? They were already here before, or are we saying that because the economy is poor, we're creating a whole new element that's coming out in the community? And I struggle with that when I was reading that today, not really understanding how we could make that judgment. I know it's tough for people, but I know people personally that are out of work right now, both husband and wife, and they're managing okay, and they're creating their environment and trying to make it work. So I guess curious from that, if you could answer that question on, because I've heard that a few times from a lot of people. I think I've heard it from Councillor Hunter as well, as the economy related to what we've seen in numbers and escalation, in particular with domestic violence and some of the break-in stuff. If you could answer that, Gord, thank you.
Yeah, two things I'll answer for you. First, it's hard to speculate. Some of the things we're hearing back from people when they're interviewed and we speak to offenders, these are some of the things they're telling us. So we can't speculate it's because of the economy, but we are hearing from people that tough times are tougher now. But as a global overall, no, we can't speculate that and say that. But
sorry, Gord. So if I'm in this situation, and when you debrief and ADVAS comes in and you're talking to those individuals that are having the challenge, do they get right into the reasons why they're here, and they share that information?
If they provide a statement, absolutely. I mean,
okay, that's fair enough. That makes more sense to me.
The communication piece does happen. And secondly, with the goals and objectives for 2016, we are doing that. The Police Advisory Committee we have come together. We are receiving input from the community in a number of different sessions in the upcoming months to engage the community and find out what areas are concerns to them. So this report is biannual, so it's twice a year. It's premature at this date to come up with that because we're summarizing 2015, but as we move forward, that's certainly going to be covered off in the next report, because that process is occurring in the next few months to identify what's a concern to the public and address those issues. So the Police Advisory Committee is fully aware and have steps in place as we speak to address and listen to the community. There'll be a media piece to that where it comes out to try and attract residents of Airdrie to come and voice what's important to them. And then we capture that and then roll into our plan. Our budget year is April 1st, and that's why we have to have those in place by April 1st of every year. So that will certainly be the next report. That's always been the plan. The first report is more a summary of 2015, and the next report, which we do, will cover off those goals and objectives for the City of Airdrie.
Okay, and that's fair enough. But as I said, when I read this, that was the first thing. It was going to outline what you're doing for 2016. So thank you for clarifying that. You wanted to comment on something, Councillor Hunter?
Yeah, through the chair. So one of the things that's came out of this report, so they've identified that with the new positions and then the ability to promote from within and have roadside supervisors, getting those boots on the ground, that is going to be used in all of the pressure point areas, property crimes. And I think that when we talked about going from 6 to 8 officers, the question was asked, could we use the 2 new positions in domestic violence or wherever the commanding officers or the watch commanders saw it necessary, and the answer was yes. What we have done at Police Advisory is we had some really great discussion at the last one about how do you engage the community, because if you have a community engagement piece and it's the same people that always complain about the same things, you're not really getting a sense of what's going on in the community. So we're looking at some innovative ways, and Mark is working with city staff to go out and reach out to a broader base of the community to say, what are the challenges? So it's all well and good for us to look at statistics and say, here's what we say, but what do the citizens say? What do the citizens deem as important? Where do they want to see those pressure points? And so then when that piece comes back, that will be strategy, correct me if I'm wrong, Gord, but for the latter half of 2016 and on into 2017.
Yes, most definitely.
Great, thanks.
Excellent. So just, Gord, I want to compliment you guys. Obviously, you have the full support of this council. We think the RCMP do a wonderful job for our community. I want to mention our resource officers. They do a great job, and to Mackenzie's, it wasn't just Officer Henry. We have 2 new officers that have been doing a great job in the community and working well with our youth, and getting them to think about things in a different way. I want to thank ADVAS. You can't say enough about them. I can't say enough about them. They do an amazing job. Citizens on Patrol, obviously, you know your support staff. We don't hear a lot about them, but without them, you're not able to fulfill your roles. So I really want to thank your support team. They do a great job as well. The Safe Street Nights, like I said, I'm hoping for more detail as to why we went from 166 tickets to 650 tickets in the 2016 breakdown in April, so that we get a real good appreciation of kind of where we're going with 8 new officers and what that kind of means to the community. I also want to say that we had a lady come forward with regards to Block Watch, and I don't know if anyone attended. I understood Councillor Hunter was there, but if I see that the Murphys were there as well. I wasn't able to make it. I was at a conference in Banff, but I think if there's statistical data that showcases, because I was a Block Watch parent in a very small community of townhomes when I first bought a home, and we were very effective. We watched out for our neighbor stuff. There was very few B&Es, even thefts. I mean, we had it all set up, a lot of really unique things. So I'm hoping that that piece might be part of this whole process. And if Block Watch is a way to go, and as Councillor Haig said, if you drive down in that downtown community, most people park in an open parking lot. They're parked along roadways. They're on the 4th floor of a building. They can't really see their vehicles, so there's accessibility that's a lot easier. That maybe there are security cameras potentially you could put in those areas. I don't know what's in there right now, but there seems to be lots of opportunities to address these issues, and I know we have a very capable leader there, and leadership, I apologize, and just looking forward to some more detailed information in 2016, and congratulate you guys for all your efforts and putting your lives on the line for us and our community, and continued efforts, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in April, if that works for you. And if you want to say anything else, Gord, you're welcome to, or if there's any more comments from council.
And just one final note, just with the Block Watch program, we do have a member we've assigned to that specifically to work with the program. So they will, they'll have one point of contact to have direct contact back to the RCMP.
Good. Well, I'm glad you brought your security team, because when I see Rogie, I feel really comfortable that everything's under control. He's got that muscular shoulder base in the back 40 that I know we're all safe. But anyway, thank you very much for all you're doing, and look forward to hearing from you guys.
Your Worship,
Actually, Mark, if it's possible, can council get a copy of that report? Because if we're not going to hear from Gord till June, maybe it's some nice reading we could have a look at. Is that possible? That your April report?
The April report?
Yeah, the one outlining sort of 2016. Sorry.
Community feedback, is that what you're asking?
No, Gord was saying that in April you're going to have your sort of your details and your goals and objectives. You're going through all the data now. We won't see that till June, but if it's possible, council would probably like to have a look at that detail and review it before the biannual visit, if that's okay. Is that okay, Mark?
Yep, I can pass that along to council.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I see a light on and one over here. So go ahead, Councillor Chapman.
I'm sorry, through the chair, I just have one more question. Inspector Station, I know you and I have spoke about this. Auxiliary members, unfortunately, we have lost the auxiliary members that was no choice of our own, but how is that going to affect our policing at all? Does that affect you at all with that extra set of eyes or anything?
Yeah, I mean, the decision was made at a national level to look at the auxiliary program. A lot of it came out of the unfortunate circumstance that occurred in Edmonton, and they looked at the risk that we're putting on people, auxiliary members without firearms, et cetera. So the decision was made that we are bound by. We haven't really seen the fallout of that yet. It's probably too early to say. The present auxiliaries, we're still trying to, I guess, determine the future role, because it's going to be very different than what the past role was, and the effect of that. So it is fairly recent, a recent decision that we're, certainly bound by. It's really too early to say what the effect will be.
How many auxiliary members did we have in Airdrie?
There were some more active than others, but I would say about, I believe 5 or 6 auxiliaries. Some more active than others, but yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Coulson.
I just wanted to say thank you for making yourself available, and it speaks volumes when you're talking about proactive policing and being in the community and seeing how much of a difference that's going to make in Airdrie. It's such a close-knit community where seeing people and seeing faces is a big deal here still, so thank you.
Sorry, 2 things. One is I forgot to thank your policing committee. I see members, Chris is out there, and others that are part of that group, and I know they put in a lot of time and energy. They're very proud of what they do, and it shows. So I want to thank them. And lastly, Mackenzie's sitting here. So quickly, we're addressing the anti-bullying bylaw, the effectiveness. Gord, where do you see? I know we've had a few complaints. There was a gentleman that was in the newspaper recently about some social media stuff. I think Sergeant Fournier was involved in that. Just kind of curious from your perspective, how are we doing? Are we getting lots of complaints? Are people feeling comfortable coming forward? Just curious from your perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Councillor Hunter.
I think, it's a good story that we don't get a lot of bullying complaints. We do have lots of tools to deal with bullying within the city of Airdrie, with the bylaw. So when you have a scenario, every scenario is different, and we have a lot of our members do a lot of counseling. Every case is very unique and very different. It's hard to say it's the same on everyone. I do think, with the bullying side, being proactive with the education piece is critical, is to prevent it from happening. So if any effort, I see most efforts should be there. If it's come to a charge, I think we've all lost, and it's all too late. So I really like the proactive piece to get the message out, so it doesn't even, it starts to disappear from our vocabulary, because that's, it's a horrible thing to happen to anybody, and it should be, like I say, eliminated from the very start in the schools, in the playground areas, on the internet, all those different areas. But like I say, if we're going to charges, we've all lost, and I think effort should be at the very proactive early stage, so people don't think about bullying, and let's don't react to it. Let's be proactive.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Hunter.
Just through the chair, just over the last couple of years, watching the strategy, the numbers that have increased with police in the community, pretty good gauge on how it's responded to. On social media, the complaint was that you could never get an RCMP officer when you need one. These guys are doing this, these guys are doing that. Now, the complaints are, darn, I got nailed again, or geez, I just saw the RCMP whipping down the street and on and on. So the fact that they're seeing the cars, they're seeing the members all over the community, that's starting to tell a tale, and social media travels pretty rapidly. So it's great to see that, and that's a result of the strategy and what you guys are doing out there, and very much appreciated. I think a lot of people that I talk to feel much safer, especially sort of that nighttime area when that time between when mom and kids are getting home from the different dance recitals and all those different things. The comments I'm hearing is that people are feeling generally a lot safer, and so that's a testament to the strategy and the work that you guys are doing. And again, thanks to Chris and the rest of the members, because pretty passionate thing when we get our discussions going about what community policing is. Our role, again, is not just to make sure that our citizens are safe, but to make sure that you guys come home safe every night to your families too, and that's an important piece to us. So thank you very much for your service.
And I guess I just want to summarize. I mean, to reinforce we've been the last year we've done a very heavy traffic enforcement program, but it has many effects, other effects and benefits to that. And, I find there's nothing better that, although we do get complaints that members doing traffic along the highway I've heard words, it's a trap, but what it also does, it puts those red and blue lights along the highway. So when people are coming through the Airdrie, scouting out Airdrie, it shows the lights, they think twice and say, hey, we're not coming to Airdrie, we're going elsewhere. So it has a big effect with those lights on. By doing that traffic stop for 10 minutes, those red and blue lights are on, and people are looking at that and thinking twice about doing other things. And it's not just the ticket part of it, it's a huge deterrent on other crimes, because many of these criminals on property crimes are opportunists, and they try and take advantage of an opportunity. So our goal is to take away those opportunities and go elsewhere.
Thanks, Gord. Councillor Hunter, please.
No further questions. Make a motion that we accept the policing overview report for information.
Excellent. Thank you. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night. Thank you, Mark. We're moving on to item 7, public question period. If there's anyone who would like to come forward, ask any question of council, please come forward. You're welcome to. Nobody's jumping up. All right, then. We're moving on to item number 8, which is a no-go. There are no bylaws either, and there is no financial position update. Item number 11, business arising, and I'm going to ask for Councillor Burley for introductions, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have staff coming forward with our we tabled last meeting, the utility master plan for endorsement.
Okay, and on this, I want to remind everyone on council, we did not ask for a presentation. We asked for some more time to review. So if you have any questions for Tim or Lauren or Bob, they are going to present a small piece, I believe, for us this evening. But have those questions ready, or we can move on to making a motion, please. This just came in, and unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to review it yet. Whenever you gentlemen are ready, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, just briefly, staff presented the utility master plan at the February 1st, 2016 Council meeting. At that meeting, Council requested that the UMP be tabled and brought back to today's meeting. So with that, staff is returning to ask the Council endorse the utility master plan. I'd just like to note as well, in addition to staff, we have Jeffrey Schulmeister from ISL in the audience here to answer any questions that you have. So,
okay, ladies and gentlemen, Councillor Coulson, please.
Sorry, Your Worship, I would just ask for maybe a few minutes to review this letter that we just received. I think maybe that's why we're so silent.
Yeah, and I'm not sure everybody had a chance to see it. And I think I see Beverly here. It'd be really nice to get this, Friday before the meeting. Then it's in our package. It's always same day. It's Just asking. I did phone and asked and talked to, yeah, okay. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and give everyone a chance to review the letter, and then we'll continue. Sorry, gentlemen. So to my council colleagues, any questions for Tim, Bob, or Lauren as it relates to the proposed adoption of the master servicing plan? Yes, Councillor Hunter.
I'm assuming that you guys have had a chance to review the UDI letter, and so do you guys have any concern with that, adding that piece in?
Your Worship, members of council, just a couple of comments, and I think that with respect to the utility master plan, a couple of things. One is this is going to be the utility master plan, and I think Tracy spoke to it at the last council meeting, will be one input to the overall growth management context study that's underway. And certainly if there are things that change along the way, and this is prefaced, the growth context work is prefaced on our master drainage plan, it's prefaced on our transportation master plan and so forth. If something changes along the way, as new development proposals come in, they will be tested against those master plans, and where there are appropriate tweaks or modifications to make, those would ultimately end up in front of council through the ASP, NSP process. So certainly the master utility plan is no different in that regard. The concern that I would raise with council respectfully is that I certainly wouldn't want to, there is perhaps in my opinion a bit of a feel for the UDI letter that they're asking council to conditionally accept the utility master plan. I guess certainly if council was of the mindset that we had not done adequate consultation, I would suggest that one of the options they have is to send us back to work with the industry again, and we'd identified some time frames for that, probably in the 4 to 5 months to do so. We commenced discussions with the industry in October of 2015. At this point in time, I would advise councils that we have not heard, certainly I'm not aware of anything coming back from the development community saying this concept is fundamentally wrong, the assumptions that you've made are fundamentally wrong, the options you've identified are fundamentally wrong. We have heard a fair amount of, if there is existing capacity in the system, we really want to be first in line to receive that. And we really don't want to be the guys paying the big bills for the major round of infrastructure. So I guess I'm just mindful that the intention of this utility master plan, it will feed into the overall growth sequencing, growth management context work. Some of the language being requested by UDI is I guess inherent to those processes, those review processes underway. And I guess I would just reaffirm that in staff's opinion, we would advise council that they have the option to endorse the utility master plan that we're recommending, to modify in accordance with UDI, and in terms of the UDI requests for language amendments, or to send staff back to do additional consultation with the industry. And staff are maintaining that we are requesting council endorse the document this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Coulson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had an opportunity to sit down with staff and really understand where we would go from here after endorsing this document. I have no concerns moving forward with an endorsement. We need these steps in the process. We need to be able to go back to our development community and say this is the path we're going to follow so that they can plan accordingly with their lands. So I hope that my fellow council members had the opportunity to ask those questions and get into the detail, which is what we asked at the last meeting, was the time to prepare and really understand what a high-level document like this was going to mean moving forward. And I'm confident that our city staff did their due diligence. And even, you know, I respect UDI wanting to get into the minutiae and the details, and but if we were to do that with everybody, it would be a long process, and it would tie up land for a long time in our city. And I think at this point our staff have done their due diligence, so I'm prepared to endorse.
Thank you. Any comments? Yes, Councillor Haig.
Thank you, Worship. And just further on that too, I mean, the open house sessions were excellent in terms of giving a taste and a feel for that. And so, again, I believe that consultation has been done. It's time to move forward.
Excellent. Councillor Hunter.
Through the chair, I guess after reading and reviewing this and talking with both sides of the equation here, I don't see anything threatening here. I don't see anything in this addition that takes away staff's ability. And just to make it perfectly clear, staff did their due diligence in consultation with consultants. There are many different consultants, the developers who pay a good chunk of the change to do all of this work have used their consultants. So part of that due diligence is all of those people getting together, understanding who's got the skin in the game. It's the developers that are going to build these things. So asking to have something in there that just clarifies the ability to stand back when needed for, I don't see anything in here that takes away staff's ability. And again, I'll leave that up to staff. I don't think I see anything in there that stops you guys from moving this forward. To me, we can still endorse it with the recommendation from UDI, and to me that's what collaboration's all about. Staff have done their diligence, their consultants have done their diligence, development communities consultants have done their diligence, and they're saying we would like to have this put in there just as a recognition that technology changes, and in some of the old communities we've seen some things that have come to light in developments that we've had to fix going forward. New technologies come forward, and this just gives them the ability to say that and to make it clear. What I've found in the past is when we tend to endorse things, and I'll liken it to when you build to densities, for example. We seem to say we've endorsed it, so we must do it exactly that way. The minutia is what you're going to get after the fact. And so again, the challenge that I have is not, so they've come, yes, it was at the last minute, but I would liken it to, this went from a draft to endorsed it, and I still have some questions about capacities that I haven't been able to really come to an understanding with. So I don't see anything in here that's taken anything away, or and I'll leave it to staff to say, is there anything in what's being asked that's going to take away your ability to move this plan forward? Is that something that you're concerned with?
Through the chair, I guess the question is one of it's one of process and level of detail. Typically, we would not produce. I think as part of our overall utility master plan, we're probably going to come out of this with several hundred pages of bound technical documents. We've shared with the development industry the concepts, the assumptions, and the proposed plans. It's somewhat uncommon that we would provide or there would not be support from the development community to move forward until all bound documents were reviewed and I guess signed off, if you will, by the development industry. Certainly with the open houses that the city have had, they have encompassed a cross-section of the development community and developer consultants as well, and that was my earlier comment, that in terms of the work that we've done, the results that we've presented, we have not heard back from the development community that there's a fundamental flaw within the plans and the recommendations that we have prepared as part of the utility master plan.
And so to answer that question, what I'm reading here is that the full report, so the full report is ready now, correct?
Through the chair, the full report is not ready now. The executive summary and the summary of findings has been made available. It will still take, we've estimated, about 2 months to compile all of the behind-the-scenes work that's formed part of those recommendations and executive summary.
So we're being asked to endorse a report that's not ready yet, when we speak to process. So let's endorse a report that's not ready yet. We've gone out to the community. We've asked for the consultation. The consultation continues. We've got members in the audience tonight that have said, don't have a problem with it. We'd like to recognize that when that full report is ready, because consultants have never ever made a mistake in a report and released it, right? So a 30-day period to review it, any good legal document, when it's a final or full report. When it goes from draft to full report, diligence in the industry's part, who's going to have a lot of skin in the game with the money, would say, well, so now that that full report's released, we would like to look at it. You're saying it takes 2 months to complete it. They're saying it takes 30 days to review it. So are these 90 days going to stop any significant development in this community or cause any harm to either side of this equation by taking 90 days to make sure this is done right?
Through the chair, I think the question becomes one of, would council prefer to wait and run through that entire process, completing the detailed technical supporting documents, circulate those to the industry, and come back and seek endorsement at that time? Or would they prefer to put a condition, I guess, on the acceptance of the master utility plan? So I guess that is probably a question that that we pose to council. Again, that is within council's purview to either endorse, to amend with the recommendations that UDI has provided, or to table this and ask staff to return back when the all of the technical documentation and review process has been completed.
Okay, so we know where you stand. Councillor Chapman, where are you at?
I'm fine with endorsing the document this evening.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Belly.
Yes, and I'm fine with it as well.
Thank you. We know so we haven't heard from Councillor Burley.
Every one of our master plans are living, breathing documents. They change over time. I'm fine with endorsing this as we were presented on February 1st.
I don't know of a plan that we haven't altered, amended, changed. It doesn't grow, it doesn't do whatever. My concern with holding it up before, and these gentlemen know it, I also met with them this afternoon, was specific to, and no disrespect to UDI, was to make sure that growth pays for itself, period. I don't want to leave this chair in 10 years from now that one of our recommendations, sorry, right, 10 years, well, I apologize. No, I didn't mean leave. I meant 10 years from now, I don't want the community to be put on the hook for something that should have been done within the plan, and I want to make sure that the specifics were there, so if these guys retired and none of us were here anymore, that the community doesn't get sent the bill because we did not put the capacity in that was necessary at the first quarter section to support the final 6. I'm convinced that that information's in there. That was my major concern, so I have absolutely no trouble adopting the plan as presented. So I will ask for a motion from, I'm not sure who's making this motion.